Are you scared at the thought that you know that Italy has dialects and you don't know if you should even worry about learning Italian because they speak dialect? Today we're talking about this very interesting topic and I will reassure you for sure. So let's get started. Like I said, we're looking at Italian dialects and accents because they're very different things and I don't want you to be scared of one because of the other. There's a huge difference between an accent and a dialect. Now, in Italy, we have both. In most cases, Italians have both an accent and a dialect. Not everybody has a dialect, but most people definitely have an accent. Think about the same in English. While the English language is quite uniform across a single country, it still changes. You have, the accent from the north, the accent from a specific state. There's the rural accent. So it's the same language. There could be a few words that are a little different because they come from a certain place, but overall you understand each other. It's just that they speak in a funny way or in a way that it's a little bit different or a little bit harder to understand. That's Italian accents. Italian dialects, as you will see, they are completely different languages and you will not be able to understand them, just like I wouldn't be able to understand them. So let's begin with accents. This is Italian spoken with a regional tone. So it's the same language that you are learning and that we all speak. But if you go to Milan, that Italian, the same sentence that I've been teaching you, will sound a little different because the person saying that sentence is from Milan or is from that area of Italy. And so it's the same sentence, the same word, the same structure, but it might sound just a little different. It could be different in a variety of ways. It could be different because of the vowels. We have open and closed vowels for E and O, and you will find that depending on which region you're from, as an Italian, you will have a preference over open vowels or closed vowels. And so I say perché, but if you go to Milan or even Sicily, you might hear perché with an open E. So these are just small differences. I say buono, but in Naples they would say buono with a closed O. It's the same word and you should be able to understand it. I just want you to become flexible as you are doing your immersion to pay attention to, oh, that person has said the same thing, but in a slightly different way. And it's interesting. Sometimes the consonant can be different. For example, the ch sound, ch, piacere. Piacere means nice to meet you, piacere. Ciao, that's the ch sound. But in some parts of Italy, for example, where I'm from, like Rome, it sounds almost like a sh, piacere. So instead of piacere, it would sound like piacere. In other parts near Bologna, it might sound like a ts sound, so piacere, piacere, piacere. I'm not very good with accents, but this is still the same word that you are learning and that you are speaking. It will just sound slightly off to you or to me. Sometimes the difference is in the intonation of the sentence. There are specific melodies that belong to specific regions, just like you have that for English. So I don't want accents to scare you in any way because they exist. Almost everybody has one. Only newscasters don't have it, and I mostly don't have it because I guess I do this job. But in most cases, people will speak with a certain accent, and in most cases, when an Italian speaks to another Italian, the other person kind of knows where that person is from, or roughly, even when they speak in proper Italian, you can tell, oh, you're Sicilian, oh, you're Sardinian, oh, you're from Milan, oh, you're from Rome. Because there are so many indicators that we can tell because we're so used to all accents now, obviously. You won't be used to the accents, but over time you will. And sometimes another thing that might differ is the pitch and the speed. Some regions are a lot more high pitched than other regions. And sometimes people from a certain region speak a little faster than others. All of these things are the same for English, I'm sure. So let's look at dialects. What are they? Let's start with the shocking news that most Italians are bilingual. Not because we have a foreign language, but because we have a dialect and the national language, Italian. 70% of Italians roughly have a dialect. The dialect is the first language that we learn even to this day. I've had arguments with some people who are from a major city in the north and say, oh no, we don't speak dialects. But I still know for sure that even the younger generations, they're still communicating in the dialect first because they're interacting with the grandparents, they're interacting with the distant uncles, the older relatives. And so the first language that we pick up usually is the local dialect. Also, there are most parts of Italy, including cities. For example, I lived in Trieste, which is a city. They speak the dialect mostly within the city, even though it's a city. So just because it's a city, it doesn't mean they will choose to speak the national language, Italian. And when you're growing up, you want to fit in. And so if all of your friends speak in a certain way with a dialect, you kind of want to fit in, and you end up also picking up the dialect and speaking that dialect. But then, of course, you go to school, and schooling is done in Italian. Everything on TV is in Italian, except for some movies like comedy that would be maybe in a little bit of a dialect. But, TV is in Italian, education is in Italian, books are in Italian, songs are in Italian. And so, of course, we become fluent in Italian. But for many of us, 70% of Italians is the second language that we learn. We're totally equally bilingual. Actually, in this case, I'm wrong, because I think that most people who are bilingual, who have the dialect and the language, they know Italian better than the dialect. I would say that's the overall sense that I get of us Italians. But I don't want you to worry thinking, these people will speak a different language to me. No, because we all also speak standard Italian. Like I said, we probably speak Italian better than we speak the dialect, because the dialect we speak maybe with just all the relatives. But so every Italian, unless we're talking about like a really elderly person who's lived in a small village for the past 90 years, then maybe they don't speak proper Italian, but everybody speaks Italian, so you shouldn't really be worried. They might still use regional vocabulary, so when they talk to you, they will switch to Italian because they know that you don't speak the dialect, you're not a local, they know you're not from the little town or the village, so they will speak Italian to you like they do to me. If I go to a little town in Sicily and they speak dialect to each other, I jump in, I say something in Italian, they understand, oh, this guy is not from here, plus I don't look like I'm from there, then they will switch to Italian. But even when they speak Italian to me, two things will happen. I will be able to still hear a regional accent, so they will speak proper Italian with the accent of that region, but that is not a problem. And occasionally they might use a word that is different from the word that I would use for the same thing, because there's a little variation in vocabulary like you find in English. So what are dialects? Dialects are, in many cases, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here with some like Italian linguists, but I'm going to give you the idea that dialects are other languages. Many Italian dialects are very similar to the Italian language. So they're still kind of understandable to Italians because we can kind of get the idea of what's happening. But there are dialects that are officially, truly other languages because they come from a different origin. They've developed in a different way. From Latin, they went another way. They crossed with other languages and they are just very different. And so there are different languages in many cases, and they can be impossible to understand. So if I went to a village in Sardinia and they spoke real, very strict, like very local dialect, I wouldn't understand. I would have no clue of what's going on, just like you. There are other parts of Italy that, for example, if I went to Florence and they spoke dialect, I would probably understand a lot of it. Not all of it, because the vocabulary would be very different, or some expressions would be just totally different from my expressions, like standard Italian, but I would understand them because Florentine dialect sounds very much like Italian. That's because Italian comes from Florentine dialect. But Rome is the same. Once you understand what Romans do when they speak, they truncate a lot of the words. They just make them a little bit shorter. You can get to understand them if you're an Italian, mostly because it's the language of comedy. And so even if you're from Turin up north and you're used to watching TV, there's a lot of comedians who use the Roman dialect to make comedy. And so we all get used to some dialects, but not all dialects. Now, you as a learner of Italian, you don't have that benefit. And so if they speak dialect to you, you will not understand, and it's okay, but they will be able to switch to Italian once you make it clear that you want to speak Italian. So I hope I reassured you about this myth that, oh, in Italy they speak dialects, why are you even learning Italian? It's not true. Ci vediamo domani. I'll see you tomorrow for a very important lesson where we're looking at the consonant C and the crazy spelling, because I know that to English speakers, writing C or reading words that have C is a little bit difficult, so we'll fix that tomorrow. A domani, ciao ciao.